Well, look who it is. Just in time for the most exhilarating essay you've ever read in your entire life. Go on, name an essay that you think was more exciting. Go ahead. Anyway, we are reading a reflective essay this week called Little Things Are Big by Jesus Colon. And we're going to switch it up from our learning targets the last couple of weeks, and we're going to focus on something very specific called parallelism. Here's the definition embedded right in the TDA prompt. Let's go. Parallelism is when authors repeat sentence structures to make their text easier to read and understand. Analyze 3 examples of parallelism in Little Things Are Big and use evidence from the text to support your analysis. Go ahead and listen. When this whistle's done, you'll be done discussing what the 2 most important terms were. Don't forget to pause. All right. So maybe you settled on the word parallelism since it's mentioned twice. That was wise, right? And maybe the word analyze, right? Being able to break down the reasons why that parallelism was used. Let's get into the story. Directions: read the text for the first time and annotate along the way. Let's go. So here's a little bit of notes on parallelism and theme, which is, of course, parallelism will help us determine. Let's take a look at this definition of parallelism. Is a stylistic arrangement in which a similar syntactic patterns repeat. Well, if you don't know that word syntax, meaning grammatical, right? Patterns are repeat, thus allowing, if you don't know that, you'd put a question mark there, thus allowing reader or listener to rely on the grammatical repetition. Oh, now I do know that word repetition. And I know that if something repeats, I bet it has something to do with a pattern. Heyo. To echo the logical similarity of thought and improving the clarity and efficiency of the passage. Well, Lord knows this is about parallelism, and Lord knows that's in our prompt, right? So, theme, just a quick review. You can take a look at it a little bit later, but it's basically the message, moral, or lesson that the author wants you to take away from the story. And there will be a connection between parallelism and theme this week. Little Things Are Big by Jesus Colon, right? I don't see any connection, so I'm going to look for all. I'm going to go with all pictures here. I noticed that this is most likely a subway, right? There's the subway schedule probably up posted there. There's the subway itself. All right, why hasn't this train showed up? I really don't see anything besides the parallel lines here and here. All right, not too much there. About the author. Jesus Colon, 1901 to 1974, arrived in New York City from his birthplace, Calle, Puerto Rico, in 1918. Puerto Ricans have been made American citizens earlier that year. Colon's earliest education came from listening to people hired to inform and entertain the cigar rollers at a factory behind his family's hotel. He went on to write for several papers in New York and Puerto Rico, publishing over 400 pieces in his lifetime. Number one, 400 published pieces. How'd you find the time, my man? So while Jesus Colon migrated to New York City much earlier, many Puerto Ricans arrived in the late 1940s. This selection, which describes events that take place around 1956, highlights some of the difficulties faced by Puerto Ricans in mainland United States society. Right? First, they weren't accepted as Americans until around, where was that? Earlier that year, so around 1918, right? And had trouble being accepted as of 1956. I think still sometimes face difficulties they ought not to, right? They should not be facing those difficulties, but the prejudice of our systems and citizenry sometimes gets in the way. Any parallelism here? They do repeat these 2 dates, right? 1940s and 1956. It kind of gives that attention to time and place. And there's a picture of Jesus Colon right over there, a little bit older there. All right, so we're going to analyze 3 examples of parallelism in Little Things Are Big. It was very late at night on the eve of Memorial Day. She came into the subway at 34th Street, Pennsylvania Station. I'm still trying to remember how she managed to push herself in with a baby on her right arm, a valise in her left hand, and two children, a boy and a girl, about 3 and 5 years old, trailing after her. She was a nice looking white lady in her early 20s. At Nevin Street, Brooklyn, we saw her preparing to get off at the next station, Atlantic Avenue, which happened to be the place where I too had to get off. Just as it was a problem for her to get on, it was going to be a problem for her to get off the subway with two small children to be taken care of, a baby on her right arm and a medium sized valise in her left hand. Well, I know I'm looking at that medium sized valise right there. Right? My question is, why don't you have any help? Why no help with all this, with all these kids, right? Husband ought to be there helping you out. Why no help? Any parallelism? I don't see much parallelism on this page, except for maybe that it was going to be a problem. Just as it was a problem here for her to get on, it was going to be a problem. So I do see a little bit of parallelism just in that one sentence down there. All right. So the repetition of the word problem. It was a problem. It was going to be a problem, right? That's the parallelism. And there I was, also preparing to get off at Atlantic Avenue with no bundles to take care of, not even the customary book under my arm, without which I feel that I am not completely dressed. Please take a moment to annotate this page. I hope your annotation and discussion of that annotation was rich. Now, we're going to be switching it up just a little bit, and we're going to be going back over that passage, and I want to show you how to do so today. Just with this one, the other one I think you can handle on your own after this example. All right, let's take a look at the directions in the upper left. Directions. Reread the underlined portion out loud on Vocaroo. Got you. Finish the sentence starter out loud, by yourself, or with an elbow partner. Okay. Well, we can all figure that out together. So first, where's my link to Vocaroo? Right here. Boom, I click that. It loads and the internet, trundles on. All right, so now I've got this. You might be prompted to allow it to use your microphone. Just say allow, all right? And then you click this. It starts recording your voice, and then you go back here, and you start with the underlined passage and read it out loud. And there I was, also preparing to get off at Atlantic Avenue, with no bundles to take care of, not even the customary book under my arm, without which I feel that I am not completely dressed. So now, what is the speaker like personality-wise based on this passage? So you have to work with it a little bit, but use those red words from the question to help make a statement. Is the speaker like personality-wise based on this passage? So I'm going to kind of reverse it a little bit and say the speaker, personality-wise, seems to be, I'm going to let you take a moment to click Vocaroo yourself and discuss this, and then we'll follow up on the video here after the pause. All right. Welcome back. So I hope you had a rich discussion. Now, if you didn't record or finish recording yet, we got what is the speaker like personality-wise based on this passage. Me, I thought, you know what? If this dude always has a book under his arm, and I know it's the guy, Jesus Colon, that we read about earlier, right? I know that he's, a bookish guy. So he's maybe a little more inward, maybe not as outgoing. We'll see. And then what you do is you go back here, you click stop, you click save and share. You click those two boxes on top of each other. You go back here and you click control, that's in the lower left-hand corner, and then the letter V as in very, very vivacious. Boom. And then you're donezo funzo, and you can revisit that, and I can revisit it anytime you or I please. All right. As the train was entering the Atlantic Avenue station, some white man stood up from his seat and helped her out, placing the children on the long, deserted platform. There were only 2 adult persons on the long platform sometime after midnight on the eve of last Memorial Day. I could perceive the steep, long concrete stairs going down to the Long Island Railroad or into the street. Should I offer my help as the American white man did at the subway door, placing the two children outside the subway car? Should I take care of the girl and the boy and take them by their hands until they reach the end of the steep, long concrete stairs at the Atlantic Avenue station? Well, right there, come on now. We have two questions back to back. Should I do this? Should I do that? Right? That is a parallelism. Okay. You'll notice that there's a link between the pattern of questions here on the right, ooh, so pretty, and the pattern of questions there. And then, of course, why shouldn't he do what the white guy did? And those of you who know something about American history might be thinking, oh, I think I know why. Courtesy is a characteristic of the Puerto Rican. And here I was, a Puerto Rican, hours past midnight, a valise, two white children, and a white lady with a baby on her arm, palpably needing somebody to help her, at least until she descended the long concrete stairs. But how could I, a black and a Puerto Rican, approach this white lady who very likely might have preconceived prejudices against blacks and everybody with foreign accents in a deserted subway station very late at night? Please take a moment to annotate this page. I hope that was rich. What would she say? What would be the first reaction of this white American woman, perhaps coming from a small town with a valise, two children, and a baby on her right arm? Would she say, yes, of course, you may help me? Or would she think that I was just trying to get too familiar? Or would she think worse than that, perhaps? What would I do if she let out a scream as I went toward her to offer my help? So, do we see a parallelism? Sure. Right here. There's a repetition of or and or. Do we notice that there's a repetition of questions? Yup. Yup. There's another question here. And the question is, why would he not want to help like the others? I think you could probably answer that, right? You might think, why would she scream, right? That's a very irrational thing to do. So, just as last time, you're going to reread the underlined portion out loud on Vocaroo and then finish the sentence starter out loud by yourself or with an elbow partner. All right. So let's go ahead and open up Vocaroo again. Right. We're going to open up a whole separate thing. I think it's just easier. Boom. It's opened up. You click that. And then let's take a moment to read just the underlined part out loud, and then I'll show you how to pause the Vocaroo. So go ahead, take a moment to read out loud, and then I'll show you how to pause it. I hope that was awesome. Now, we haven't had a chance to get to the question yet, all right? So I'm going to show you how to pause it. So I want to pause it. You go to these two little lines next to each other. Boom. It's paused. Now let's take a look at this question together. What do these repeated questions tell me, the reader, about the narrator? What do these questions, repeated questions, tell me, the reader, about the narrator? And in case you forgot that word narrator, it's the person telling the story. Well, I'd like you to take a moment and answer that question. But first, turn the Vocaroo back on. Press play. Boom, it's recording again. Go ahead and record. Hope you did a great job. Go ahead and stop it, save and share, copy and paste it, and boom, right there it goes. And I'll get rid of it there. Why clutter? Was I misjudging her? So many slanders are written every day in the daily press against the blacks and Puerto Ricans. I hesitated for a long, long minute. The ancestral manners that the most illiterate Puerto Rican passes on from father to son were struggling inside me. Here was I, way past midnight, face to face with a situation that could very well explode into an outburst of prejudices and chauvinistic conditioning of the divide and rule policy of the present day society. Be sure to check out this cartoon later of the divide and rule uh, and what they're saying here, right? Divide and rule, divide and govern, same kind of thing. It was a long minute I passed on by her as if I saw nothing, as if I was insensitive to her need, like a rude animal walking on two legs. I just moved on, half running by the long subway platform. Leaving the children in the valise and her with the baby on her arm, I took the steps of the long concrete stairs in twos until I reached the street above and the cold air slapped my warm face. This is what racism and prejudice and chauvinism and official artificial divisions can do to people and to a nation. Take a moment to finish annotating this important page. All right. Perhaps the lady was not prejudiced after all, or not prejudiced enough to scream at the coming of a black man toward her in a solitary subway station a few hours past midnight. If you were not that prejudiced, I failed you, dear lady. I know that there is a chance in a million that you will read these lines. I'm willing to take that millionth chance. If you were not that prejudiced, I failed you, lady. I failed you, children. I failed myself to myself. By the way, we have to acknowledge the parallelisms here, right? If you were not prejudiced, I failed you. I failed you, lady. I failed you, children. I failed myself to myself. All that repetition of phrase and just words, right? Why would he do that? Why phrase it that way? I buried my courtesy early on a Memorial Day morning, but here is a promise that I make to myself here and now. If I am ever faced with an occasion like that again, I'm going to offer my help, regardless of how the offer is going to be received. Then I will have my courtesy with me again. We will return to this question and the matching essay later. Be well.